Join me on a tour of Disney World's value resorts. This is Go Inform Podcast, episode 62. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the show. Great to have you here once again, talking about the Disney World hotels. Today, we are talking about the value category of the resorts on property, and I've got lots of stuff to share with you to help you make that big decision about where you want to stay next time you go to Disney World. My name's Maven. I am the hostess of the show here. And thanks so much for joining me today. This is another episode in a continuing series about the Disney World hotels. If you haven't listened to any of these other episodes, I would recommend that you at least skip back to episode 59. That is sort of a basic overview about the different types of hotels, the locations, some of the things to consider when trying to decide where you want to stay. And I think it gives you a good foundation for what we're diving into today, which is a little more detailed look at some of the specific resorts on the property. Another episode that many of you guys probably have never listened to because it's way back in the archives is episode 9. This is my total basics introduction to Disney World. And I talk about all the different things that make up that wonderful place that is Disney World. And it's a really good place to start if you're just starting to learn, what to expect and what is there. So that is all the way back in episode 9, one of my first episodes though. So just consider that when you're listening. But yeah, that one will give you some good basics. And actually, the episodes following it also have a whole bunch of things to give you a foundation for your trip. So I've got one that's about the commonly used terms that you're going to hear when you're researching your trip for Disney World, and audio park tours of all of the parks. So before or after you listen to this episode, you might want to scroll back and give those ones a listen as well. So as always, I have lots of notes for you in the show notes on the blog. So if you want to use that for reference, I highly recommend it. And the show notes are at goinform.net/62. Okay, so today we're talking about the value category of hotels at Disney World. These are the most budget-oriented hotels, and I think that sometimes they get overlooked because of the connotation of value. Now, on the other hand, a lot of people may only look at value and not look at the others. And as I've been saying kind of throughout this whole discussion, I think it's really a good idea to not immediately pigeon yourself into a certain category, because you might find the perfect thing at a price that works for you in a different category. And that definitely counts for value as well. So you may think that you're usually a deluxe hotel person, but there might be some things at one of these value resorts that actually really appeal to you. So today we're going to talk about the 6 different properties that are considered part of the value resorts at Disney World and what makes all of them special. So when we're talking about Disney's value hotels, there's a few things to keep in mind. First off, kind of what they consider value. So value means that these are going to be the smallest rooms for their standard rooms on the property. These hotels are going to have simple dining options. You're not going to have a bunch of fancy restaurants at them. And you can't walk to a park from any of the value hotels. So that's kind of what makes them value in terms of Disney. Now, I also want to talk about what value isn't. at Disney, because I think if you think of a destination like Las Vegas and you think about what hotels are the least expensive, you're probably going to come to mind like the oldest hotels. They're probably a little run down. They've seen better days. Their service isn't great. That's why they're less expensive. This isn't the case at all at Disney World. Disney built the value resorts to be value resorts. These are not the oldest resorts on property by any means. Actually, the oldest resorts are some of the deluxe resorts. So the value resorts are really what they're designed to do is they're designed to be budget friendly for families. They're not opulent properties, but they are meticulously themed. You've got some really elaborate theming at these different value resorts. And if you're looking for that fully immersive Disney experience on your trip, then you really ought to look at some of these value resorts. So let's dive in and start looking at what these resorts are and what you'll find there. So the first one we're going to go to is the Pop Century. Pop Century is really a nostalgic look at the second half of the 20th century. The theming is all about like pop culture from different decades. All of these resorts are in the form of like 2 or 3 story buildings that are spread out on the property with exterior corridors and exterior doors to the rooms. As I talked about last time in the moderate resorts, do not let the appearance of those buildings make you think that this is like a roadside Ramada Inn. The property that these buildings sit on it's almost its own theme park. It's definitely beautifully landscaped, themed, and quiet. You're not on highway or anything like that. You really are on it. Each one of them is on its own beautiful sprawling property. So at Pop Century, the different buildings or different kind of clusters of buildings are themed after different decades. And what they do is they put these huge icons up and different color schemes and stuff to evoke that certain decade. So like the 50s section of Pop Century has a huge jukebox kind of built into one of the buildings and a pool that's shaped like a bowling pin. There's all these other really cool big icons all around the resort. I mean, you could just take an afternoon and just walk around and check it out. There's like a giant big wheel and a big Mr. Potato Head, and it's all oversized. And you know that the 80s has the bright neon colors. So a lot of cool theming throughout the resort. Pop Century and really all of these hotels is located in the south end of Disney World. Pop Century is the closest theme park to it is Hollywood Studios. And one of the best things about staying at Pop Century is that it is at the terminus of the Disney Skyliner, which will take you directly to Hollywood Studios, and you can get to Epcot on the Skyliner as well. So if you stay at Pop Century, to get to those two parks, you just hop on the Skyliner. This is a really nice way to get around and super convenient. It's a great perk that you're getting and you're staying at a value resort. In terms of getting to the other theme parks, it's going to be bus ride. You're fairly close to Animal Kingdom down in this end of the property, and it's a bit of a ride up to Magic Kingdom. But Pop Century only has one bus stop for the whole resort, so you are not going to have to worry about where you are on the route of bus stops inside the resort. The other value resorts are going to have multiple bus stops within them, which means that if you're at the last bus stop on the route, then the bus could be full when it gets to you in the morning. So you can mitigate this by choosing rooms and upgrading your room a little bit to be closer to the best bus stop. But just keep in mind that when you stay at Pop Century, you also have the Skyliner to travel to the parks as well. In terms of dining, Pop Century and the other value resorts basically are going to have a big food court, and then like pool bars. This hotel has 3 themed pools. The 70s one is the Hippy Dippy pool, which is pretty fun. And that pool even has some cool water jets. So the value resorts do have some pretty neat themed pools. Again, even though it's value, you're not going to end up with just, boring decor and little pools and stuff like that. You're still going to get all those amenities that you expect when you're staying at Disney and when you're paying the Disney price. Pricing on these hotels is going to compare to like Embassy Suites, something like that, if you stay off property. But when you stay on property, you have all the convenient transportation provided, and you have the Disney service. Yes, there may be fewer hotel employees on site at a value than at a deluxe hotel, but they are all going to be providing that same really wonderful Disney service, and they're going to be wanting to make you have the best vacation you can. So there is a lot to be said for that as well. At Pop Century, the room types that you might want to note is the preferred rooms. If you stay in one of those, you're going to be closer to where the bus stop is, and you're going to be closest to the Skyliner. So it's usually not very much more to upgrade to the preferred room, and it just makes it more convenient for the transportation. Okay, next up, we're going to go over to the Art of Animation Resort. So Art of Animation is actually kind of next to Pop Century. They are adjacent, and the thing that's kind of in the middle between them is the Skyliner station. So you can also have the convenience of the Skyliner if you stay at Art of Animation. And if you can't already guess, the theming of this resort is animation. So all the theming is classic animated movies. This hotel has a whole bunch of Pixar references. There's like a whole section that looks like you're in Radiator Springs in Cars Land. There is Finding Nemo, Lion King, Little Mermaid. If you want the whole, if you really want to dive in and have Disney theming for your whole trip, this is the place to stay. You can stay in themed rooms at this hotel that are themed after Nemo, Lion King, Cars, and Little Mermaid. A lot of the rooms at Art of Animation are actually family suites. The family suites are a great option if you just want some more space for your family. They can actually sleep up to 6 people also. These themed rooms are about the size of 2 regular rooms put together. They have a bedroom, they have a living room, a kitchenette, and 2 bathrooms, which I think is probably the best thing about them. In terms of cost, a family room at Art of Animation will most likely cost less than just a standard room in one of the deluxe resorts, or even possibly, depending on when you go and if there's some discounts, you might even get it for less than a moderate resort room. So yes, you don't have the dining options that on site that you would have at a moderate or a deluxe, but you can get this more space and those 2 bathrooms by staying at Art of Animation, and you get all that cool theming. Art of Animation does have multiple bus stops on this property, so you're going to want to kind of keep an eye on that when you're choosing what rooms to stay in. But that you've got the Skyliner to get to Epcot and Hollywood Studios. So a great location, lots of cool theming. This is definitely one of the top choices for anybody that wants to choose a hotel that's in the value category. Next, we're going to go over to the All-Star Resorts. So there's actually 3 All-Star Resorts at Disney World. There's All-Star Sports, All-Star Music, and All-Star Movies. Each of them is its own resort with its own food court and its own check-in space and all of that. But they are all kind of the same big, huge resort. And you can actually go between them and go over to the other one, food court and stuff like that. So I'm kind of lumping them together here a little bit. The All-Star resorts are closest to Animal Kingdom, but again, no walking distance to a park. There is not a Skyliner here, so if you're staying at All-Star, you will be on the bus to all of the parks. Each of the hotels has 3 big themed pools plus some leisure pools, and you can hop between the pools too if you're staying at All-Star. So lots of options for that, especially if you're expecting to spend time at the pool and on the resort property. This could be a good choice for you. The All-Star resorts are the closest to the ESPN Sports Complex, which under normal operations, ESPN Sports is a big site for things like softball tournaments, cheerleader competitions, all the kind of stuff that brings youth groups to Disney World. And because of that, and because it's in the value category, there can be a lot of those groups staying at All-Star at any given time. One piece of advice I would give you is if you are not in one of those groups and you're thinking about staying at one of the All-Star resorts, take a look at the calendar of events at the ESPN Sports Complex and just make sure there's not some gigantic event happening when you're going to be there, because that could mean that your hotel is full of a bunch of marching bands or something. And if you're there with your 4-year-old and you need to nap in the afternoon stuff, that may not be compatible. So just keep that in mind when you're looking at the All-Stars. So now we're going to go to the last place that's on my list. And this one is very unique. We're circling back over to Fort Wilderness, which Wilderness Lodge and Fort Wilderness I've discussed on both of the previous episodes, because this property falls into every category. And in the value category, there is a campground at Fort Wilderness. You can literally pitch a tent and you just pay for the campsite and camp at Disney World. Usually it's less than $100 a night, and you get all the same guest benefits, early admission, all the transportation, whatever Disney's offering to people staying in Wilderness Lodge, you get it if you stay in the campground. So if you want to just go on the cheap and camp, you actually can do that at Disney World. If you want to do more of a glamping kind of thing, then you can also, instead of just a tent site, you can rent a site for an RV. You can bring your own RV down there and stay in the campground, or you can rent an RV. And the way that that system works is there are outside providers there in the Orlando area who will bring the RV in to the campsite. They will park it, they will set it up, they will stock the fridge. It will be completely ready for you to go, and all you do is show up. In the show notes, I have a link to one of the more popular providers of this service. So if you want to explore this further, you can. Fort Wilderness is this wonderful, huge wooded resort that is like going to summer camp there. They have all kinds of activities, and it is just about a 15-minute boat ride over to Magic Kingdom. So this is up in the Magic Kingdom area, but you are literally camping, almost in the shadow of the castle when you stay at Fort Wilderness Campground. A very unique option, and something that I think a lot of people aren't even aware exists. So keep it in mind if you want to explore it further. Like I said, I've got links in the show notes so you can check it out. Again, the show notes are at goinform.net/62. All right, so now's the part where we talk about what is open right now and what isn't. So because of COVID-19 operations, hotels in every category at Disney World have been affected. In terms of the value resorts, the all-star resorts, every one of them are closed right now, and we're not sure when they're going to reopen. So if you're traveling in the first half of 2021, you're probably going to find that all-stars, any of the all-stars will be off limits to you. The other properties are available. So from camping to, a Cars family suite, those things are going to be available for you to book. Again, as we get into the end of 2021, hopefully all the options will be there for you. Just be aware that Disney has been, limiting capacity, and so the hotels are affected as well. Incidentally, if you have a reservation at a hotel that Disney later decides they're closing because of the capacity issues, they will contact you and they will move you to another resort of equal or better category without charging you more. So, that's something that they're doing for their guests to, give people peace of mind. So don't be afraid to make a reservation, but do be aware that, as things are so in flux right now, that things could change, but Disney will do everything they can to take care of you. And if they do close your hotel for some reason and tell you that you're going to have to go to a different one. By the way, that's not going to happen while you're staying there. I'm talking about they would give you notice in advance. They give you the option to cancel your reservation with no penalty. So they're going to work with you. Fingers crossed, we won't be seeing any more of that now that we're into 2021. But just a heads up, that kind of thing has happened, especially in 2020. So just know, as we've been talking about, if you're traveling during the COVID-19 era, there's things that could happen just unexpectedly. So make sure that you're, aware of that and just go into it knowing that you may have to be flexible. Okay, guys. Well, that wraps up our tour of all the Disney World resorts. If you haven't listened to the episode about the moderates or the deluxe hotels, take a listen to those too. Even if those aren't, necessarily your cup of tea, it's kind of fun to find out about them. And really, one of the coolest things to do at Disney World on a day that you're not in the parks or when you're taking a break is to go and check out some of these resorts, because there are cool things at every single one of them that are really worth the trip. So knowing about them and knowing what their theming is and where they are can help you kind of plan some of the other things you want to do besides just hanging out and playing in the parks. So the next episode, I've got one more for you about the Disney World hotels. That will be next time. And that is going to be my top tips for saving money, for making it easier to book, for just making your trip easier and more fun and more efficient, and all related to the hotels. So stay tuned for that one. Thanks again for joining me on this episode. Remember, the show notes are at goinform.net/62. You can follow me on social. Just look for GoInformNet wherever you want to follow me. And I will catch you guys next time. Thanks again.